Hey everyone, welcome back to our exciting episode of Attack Productions. Today, Bancroft, being joined by Jimmy, Jake, and Nick.
What?
Who?
Why?
In today's matchup is Jimmy taking on Chase. There's a bit of some switcheroo happening here, but Jimmy is playing SSG Trunks, while Chase is playing Frieza Swap, the new one. Let's get into it. Buttons, links, check them out. So, I think we've had Frieza on the channel before. I don't remember if we have, but until then, talk about Trunks for a bit, Jimmy.
Why?
What dice did you roll? What number is it?
I think that's a 2.
That's a 7. But we haven't had this deck on the channel, I think, in a very long time, because it just recently got support with the latest set. And by the latest set, yes, the one we're currently in for the last month or so.
It warps shit and plays shit and draws a lot of cards. So pretty good deck. I feel like every black deck that's been relevant has had Trunks in the leader in some way, or at least the completely meta wiping deck, because this deck has been in every event, but it's not. I don't think it's made a top 8, has it?
I think it has made top 8.
Notes in 16 for sure.
I feel like every time I see a top 16 breakdown, it's 8 whatever decks, 8 SSG Trunks, and then when we see the top 8, it's there's maybe one time a Trunks topped. So this is the definition of a top 16 deck. But I think that is due to, which this was a god mill.
Yeah, it was.
But I feel like it's almost due to anytime you have a deck that plays randomly off of the top of the deck, you have chances of just getting bad mills, just bricking and not being able to play the game. I think about one of our other players, Tracy, played SSG Trunks this last week and just had a horrible time with the deck. Just could not see anything off of the top. So while the deck is very strong, you do have the chance of just bad RNG, which in this case, off of my top mill, it's I'm gonna have to fuck up real bad if I want to lose this game.
Dang.
But I think of the Jax, where after the errata from 5 to 3 really hurt that consistency, and those 2 extra cards really hurts the consistency of that deck, and probably why we really haven't seen it shine, even in slew of the other bans around the deck, where this deck got some new support that boosted its consistency a little bit, so I think that's why it's popped back up. And it's a very popular deck, and it's very fun to play.
Yeah, I tried that deck out when it first came out, and I thought it did have some really good merits to it. It just never had a good way to close the game out.
Hang on, what?
Speaking of consistency,
Bro,
I swear I shuffled this deck. Yeah, this Kai is certainly one of the best new cards for this deck. It plays your Unison, which this is a Spirit Boost based deck. It plays your Unison from your hand or Warp for 1 energy and lets you take up to 2 life. And then I think it might have another effect. I could be wrong. I'm reading it there because this was maybe you have to bottom deck a card to activate. But it just does everything that the deck needed it to do. It feels almost like a custom card. Somebody was hey, what do you think about my new SSG Trunks support? This is my dream card. It almost feels like that, because every time I read that card, I'm like, holy shit, it just fixed every problem this deck has ever had, other than the random RNG off the top, which is now the only thing holding the deck back.
It reads like a promo.
I was gonna say it's like that promo Kai we got for the was it Gogeta deck? Yeah, with the PyCon Unison, I think it was.
Yep. Someone at Bandai likes Supreme Kai.
Yeah, the card is huge. The other support card I got was the 8-drop Trunks, and as well as the Z Leader, which the Z Leader is great, but to be honest, I think I boarded it like maybe twice in my games with the deck because I'm usually just killing with the battle cards because they're so strong. But the 8-drop Trunks, it's a Xeno Evolve. If you don't know what Xeno Evolve does, it will warp the card that you're evolving on top of and come in active mode, and evolves on top of the 5-drop. So get 2 swings with the 5-drop, bring 3 back on each swing. Xeno Evolve, you get a big triple strike that's going to warp something annoying barrier, and then you have a drop area so you can overwhelm if you want. So very strong plays, and it opens up some really cool play lines. But
does the 5-drops effect interact with Xeno Evolve? Like, does it get removed from the game?
It will get removed from the game, but the cost is removing the card from the battle area or sending.
So it doesn't have to hit the warp. Yeah, that was smartly.
Yeah.
It was smart the way they put that together.
Yeah. So the 5-drop does have a permanent that it removes this up from the game. It's removed from the battle area, which thank God, because that card would be way too damn good if you could just keep recycling the same copy. Luckily, I didn't have to have that problem because I just milled 2 of them on my first play. And if you need more than 2 in a game, then you might not be winning that game in the first place.
I wanted to pivot for a bit, if that's okay. Just because we've done a lot of talking about Trunks, I just want to kind of a little bit talk onto Frieza Swap. And Jimmy, correct us on this a bit, because I think you have the most experience with it so far. I think I might be wrong on this one, just in the idea of playing against it. But what makes this deck so good is just its ability to consistently look for targets, which using the leader's ability. I think both on the front and the back side are searchers, right?
The front side has an activate main to search top 5. It has basically a successor of Hope in the extra card, which is also searchable on the front side, which can search your swap targets. Plus, you get off of the 3-drops, and when you swing with a Frieza, you get to look at the top 3 and combo with the card, which you can then in turn Z-charge that. Then the 1-drop has a really cool effect where you could swap a card from your Z energy to your hand and then Z-charge a card. So you have your hand scattered across pretty much the entire field. You don't have a ton of drop area interaction outside of like the Sorbet, which is a recovery play that can play your 1-drop. But you constantly get to go into your deck. You constantly get to interact with your Z energy, and like it's just a really cool deck because you keep returning cards to your hand, so you really never run out of resources, and it's an incredibly consistent deck. I have not seen a single game of Frieza Swap where they don't get to actually play their entire chain.
I will say, someone who's playing Frieza Swap, which Chase has played enough to kind of know the deck in and out, those cards can get confusing by just reading their text, because one's like, do this to a barrier, and this was like, do this to a barrier, and it's like, okay, if you played the wrong one, then it was like pop a card and rest of ignoring barrier, and the other one says tap a barrier card. And if you play them in the wrong order, it will completely just mess up what you're trying to remove on your opponent's side of the board. So just kind of like knowing which ones come down first, because there's like, including the promo one, I think there's 3 different 3-drops, and then the set had 2 different 5-drops, I think it was, or 3 different 5-drops.
If you count the Goku Frieza, there are 3 5-drops. He has the 2 5-drops on field right now. There is one that is like a Senshinran type effect that will negate a card at auto speed. And then the other one is a card that cannot be removed by your opponent's skills. Which is really strong if you're... The deck kind of gives you options across the board. You only have the 1-drop, which is kind of weird, but the 1-drop is very strong. But you have kind of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to your rest of your swap targets, because you have 3-drops that search, you have 3-drops that pop, you have 3-drops that will combo up the top for big attacks while also triggering your leader effect. Then you have the 2 5-drops, and then you have the 8-drop, which is a fantastic boss monster that'll blow up everything, and big body attack that also has effects to restart your chain from the Z energy. which is a really cool recovery play, which we really haven't seen all that much.
Can we take a second? And Jesus Christ, Jimmy, what are your draws today?
I wish I could tell you.
Hitting all your Trunkses, getting your secret rare off a draw too. Like, Jesus Christ, man, you are cheating.
Dude. Like I said, I'm cheating. Hold on, calm the fuck up. Like I said, like this deck is high highs, low lows, where you can just get the absolute god hits, and your opponent can be sitting there like, well, shit, like I just lost the game because there was this card 3 cards from the top, and then. Which that's just card games. Like you could have the best deck in the entire game and then draw bad and lose because of that. So I did complain a lot about the consistency of this deck early on, and this is not the best showcase of bad consistency, but this is a showcase of very good consistency.
I do want to point out, I think your order of playing cards, knowing that what he can play on his next turn, I think you're playing very wise. You play the Trunks instead of going straight into the Cooper play, which I feel like a lot of people will see the Cooper like, all right, cool, bring out Boss Monster, let's get rid of an important life. But you're holding off on that because, like you said, the A-drop can just board wipe everything, which he can initially just play next turn. And if you play Cooper, you're only getting it for... I guess he'll have to bait out a card first for Cooper's effect and then immediately turn around and play the A-drop afterwards.
Yeah, I didn't want to commit the Evil Saiyan so early. Plus, being able to play that card from the warp, it's really nice to just throw it in there and make your opponent sweat. Because they know at any moment they could be under Evil Saiyan. And plus, I know Chase does run Quell Bloodlust and the Super 17 Secret Rare. So I was really trying not to walk into either of those at any point.
He does have both,
which he does. He does have at least Quell Bloodlust in hand. I didn't pay attention to see if the other, but I wanted to try to bait out at least some sort of counterplay. Or the other path is he's going to hold that counterplay, or well, there he goes. So my thought process there was I either bait out the counterplay so I can board my Evil Saiyan, or I keep trying to bait so he doesn't use the card and then gets into a position where he's like, damn, I really should have just used that card then. And then I can get into like my 8-drop Trunks or something like that and then kill him because he was too conservative on a play.
And Frieza Awakening's always fantastic. Is this a 20k at base? Or 15k?
It's a 20k base. Fantastic Z Awaken. It's free when you're at 3 life. You just got a spirit boost. When you swing, it's the same effect of draw 2, discard 1 or warp 1. And then it has basically just the activate main on the base leader on crack. You get to pull 2 cards back. You get to warp a card. You get plus 5k and double strike. So the Z leader is a fantastic addition to the deck. It's just a better version of the base leader. But I don't really like going to such a low life total, especially like at our locals. I feel like I try to defend my life much higher now. Even with Champa around, I still feel like this is a format, at least at our locals, that I want to keep my high life total. So going down to 3 is something I try not to do, even though I do get access to a fantastic Z leader.
We talked about it in an earlier video because you mentioned Champa. Like next set, it's going to also kind of define that line of where to go back into defending your life in certain decks, because those Z extra cards we're getting, some of them can do add double strike, some of them can add triple strike. So like it gets to a point where depending on what you're playing with, you have to go back to that mindset. Like I don't want to go too low, but in decks like this, you want to if you want to maximize your potential. I think. But you mentioned I think earlier in the video where you've only really Z Awakened like twice. I think.
Yeah, because usually what's happening is that I either win the game before I even get to the point where I could Z Awaken, or what happens most of the time is that my opponent is really smart and clears out my Unison on their kill turn and stops me from being able to Spirit Boost it into the 20k base. Which is it's really frustrating when it happens, because they won't touch my Unison the entire game. I get a little comfortable, and then they're just like, "Hey, suck turds, nerd."
So I know you would rather play the $90 card, but I think Fake Reading is still a decent card. It warps a card I think on play into 30k swing.
Oh yeah, this deck I do not have access to the SS4 Vegetas, the regional promo. Too damn expensive. Bandai, please reprint that shit. I need that card. But I chose Fang Greeting because it's a Vegeta slot, and I do run stuff like Thwarting and the other Gogeta fusions, so I needed targets. But that would be the regional Vegeta if I had it, and would also boost this deck even more because it's another card that can play off of another card you're already playing, which is the Beyond All Limits Goku. I think that's the name of the card. I could be completely wrong.
So if you can, Jimmy, explain the addition of the SS3 Cumbered in the deck. What does that do for you?
Just insane black card. Card's generic. You can play it in black decks for 2 energy. Can keep all of your opponent's cards rested. So it's kind of like a niche effect of giving your opponent's card Servant. Kind of a niche effect, giving them Servant. But in some decks, there's some like graveyard interaction, so keeping them from being popped and going to the grave so they can get their effects is kind of huge. So it just kind of locks these on their board. Plus, you get the option of multiple attacks or one big attack, which just having that control and pressure is really nice.
Speaking of pressure and control, playing this with him at 2 life, I know ideally if you give him down to 1 life, it's perfect, but 2 life now puts him in a bind because he's tapped out. He can't counter block, can't do anything like that. So now he is threatened with a potentially, I think, a 40k swing and whatever you steal. And if he can't come out of those 2 remaining attacks, especially you got the leader still, like it's just ridiculous pressure right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Unison's a 15k base, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, after I seen that he was tapped out, I felt comfortable going into my big boys here and didn't have to worry about walking into a big counterplay. Which luckily he didn't have. He didn't have anything in the first place, but it let me feel more comfortable going into it.
With that being said, thank you for tuning in. Keep in mind his buttons, links in the description. Check them out, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.